Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many a time before. I've had some really interesting, very nice and also very quirky beers from these guys over the years, and this brewery has really made its name from adding lots of random flavours and things like that into their beers, and it's another beer like that that we're going to have a look at today. And I think it's fair to describe this brewery as one of the best known Swedish craft beer brands these days. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So for this one then, we are going to stick to Sweden. Like I said, we're going to head up towards Stockholm once again, the Swedish capital, and we're having a look at another beer from Omnipollo. So this is one of the latest additions to their Bianca series, which is their big kind of fruity sweet gose things that they do, or Lassi Goses as they call them, and this one in particular is called the Noa Pecan Coconut Blueberry Mudcake Lassi Gose. It comes in at 7% ABV, and the name Noa in this, or the word Noa in this, refers to their Noa Imperial Stout that they do, which is probably one of their best known beers. So yeah, I think this one could be quite interesting. This might turn out to be a sort of cakey and slightly stouty type gose, but yeah, I think this should be really interesting. So this beer was released as part of the Tillfälliga temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 9th of March 2021, and this is the third Bianca that we've had over March of 2021. I reviewed the other two already. The first one was the apricot almond vanilla deep Lassi Gose, if I remember rightly, and then the next one was the quadruple lingonberry maple pancake Lassi Gose, if I'm remembering the name rightly. It's quite difficult to remember the exact names of these beers, but yeah, one of them was apricot and almonds, the other one was lingonberry. So the apricot and almond one was really nice. I was surprised by that because it was clear. It was the first clear one that I've had in this series from them so far. But then the quadruple lingonberry, that one was puckering as fuck. That was a crazy beer, that one. I really enjoyed it, but it did take a little bit of time for it to kind of grow on the palate and for my mouth to get used to it. So yeah, this one I think should be slightly different to both of those. This one I think, as I say, will be a little bit more kind of cakey and dark. So yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And as I said earlier, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's see how we get on then. A 7% Gose with some really interesting flavours in it. So yeah, let's see how we get on. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Omnipollo before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Omnipollo then, on to my brewery notes. So Omnipollo, as I've told you before, were founded back in 2011 by Henrik Fenty, a long-time homebrewer, and Carl Brandon, who is a clothing designer. So the two met one day and they decided that they were going to start a brewery together, having discussed how insular the craft beer scene was both in Sweden and further afield. But they said that they wanted to reinvigorate the craft beer scene both from a stylistic sense and a gastronomic sense, and you know, they've kind of succeeded in doing that quite well. So the Omnipollo artwork is very distinctive. That of course is designed by Carl Brandon, but then the style of beers that these guys do are very unique as well. You know, lots of flavour essences, random adjuncts and things like that in their beers, and just flavours that you wouldn't normally find in beers actually. So it's a completely different style of brewing that you get from these guys. But they felt that this goal that they had, which they've kind of succeeded in, well, they have succeeded in it, I should say, they felt that this partnership between a clothing designer and homebrewer was actually very logical for them, and safe to say it's worked out very well. But the name of the brewery, Omnipollo, is derived from omnipotent chicken, Omnipollo, pollo being Spanish for chicken, and these guys were gypsy brewers up until quite recently, up until 2020. But they opened up the Omnipollo's Hat in Stockholm, which is a collaboration with Pizza Hut. This has become quite popular. I've been there twice, if I remember correctly, but you know, it's got some great pizza there. And they've also got some Omnipollo beers that you won't find in other places, so I highly recommend that you check that out. I hope that I can film an out and about video there at some point. But in 2019 they also opened up another bar in Hamburg down in Germany, and they've also, and I think their web shop is actually based out of that shop in Germany as well, but they also have another bar in Gothenburg these days, and they've just opened one up in Tokyo in Japan. So when I go over to Japan later in the year, I will need to go and visit the one in Tokyo. I always love going up to Tokyo to see my friends up there. So yeah, we will see about doing an out and about video at the Omnipollo bar in Tokyo. That would be quite fun. But yeah, in March of 2020, though, these guys kind of stopped being fully gypsy brewers, if you like, and they announced that they were going to open up their own brewery at Sundbyberg, which is kind of to the northwest of central Stockholm, and this was opened in a former church, which previously housed Sundbyberg. How do you say this? Sundbyberg's Köksbryggeri, basically the Sundbyberg kitchen brewery, if that makes sense. But apparently the current brewing capacity in this place is around 100,000 litres, and they're currently working to scale it up to around 600,000 litres of beer per year, and that should be finished very soon from what I understand. And a good chunk of their beer will be brewed there, but they are still going to continue to gypsy brew. Much of their beer is actually brewed at the De Proef Brewery in Lochristenhoofd near Ghent in Belgium. I know that a number of their imperial stouts have been brewed at Dugas Brewery in Gothenburg. I think they brewed a few things at Popel's as well, if I remember rightly. I think they've brewed some things with Lervig in Norway. So I'm not sure, I'm not 100% about Popel's and Lervig, but definitely a number of the stouts have been brewed at Dugas Brewery in Landvetter, just outside of Gothenburg, but most of their beer, the bigger volume stuff at least, is brewed at the Proef Brewery in Lochristenhoofd, just near Ghent down in Belgium. But yeah, as of March 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced around 345 different kinds of beer, and there's a whole host of different things in there. The thing that's really great about this brewery is that if you have something that's a little bit more straight up, I would recommend, for example, the Nebuchadnezzar, which is their West Coast IPA, or the Fata Morgana, which is a kind of New England IPA. I would really recommend that you have a go at those ones. Those are very, very nice beers. So these guys can do the really random stuff with all the different flavour essences and adjuncts and things, but they're also very capable when it comes to brewing, you know, purist style beer, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would highly recommend you check out this brewery. As I said earlier, probably one of the best known Swedish breweries these days. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Omnipollo if you get the chance. Pick a style of beer that you enjoy and you will be in for a bit of a treat, but these guys are probably best known for their big kind of sweet stouts, actually, notably the Yellow Belly and the Noa, and there's a few others in there too. But yeah, that's all I can tell you about Omnipollo for the moment. So if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this one then. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So like I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a 7% Gose, a little bit heavier than the other two we've had previously, both of which were 6%, but you can see on the back there, again, it's a member of the Bianca series. So the Noa Pecan Coconut Blueberry Mudcake Lassi Gose. I'm wondering if I can fit all of that in the video title actually, but yeah, we'll just need to see. But yeah, I think this should be quite interesting. A little bit different from the other artworks we've had in the Bianca series before, but like I say, well, this thing here, this face, is what you would normally find on the Noa beers. So yeah, 7%er this one. This beer cost me 125 Swedish kronor, so yes, it's a little bit more expensive. It's a half-litre can though, it is a half-litre can, but yeah, 125 Swedish kronor is roughly about €12.50, maybe about £11, something like that, and in American, what would it be, maybe about $14, something like that. The American dollar's pretty weak at the moment. March 2021, but yeah, it's quite an expensive beer. This, if you actually buy it from Omnipollo's web shop, they want €18 for it, which I think is pretty crazy. I would highly doubt that it costs €18 to make a beer like this, but then again, you never know. I would just need to see, but I think maybe the flavour essences are very, very expensive. I don't know, but yeah, it's quite an expensive beer, this one, but you know, I always get these as a bit of a treat. I don't really spend money on much else other than my beers, to be honest with you. I save most of my money and invest it. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, a little bit pricey this one, but hopefully it's worth it. The other ones certainly were. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very, very curious to see what this has in store for us. Oh, there we go. Little bit of stuff wanting to escape from this one. We'll just get that out and into the glass. A little bit of foam there. But yeah, let's get this guy out and see how we get on then. I'm very curious about this one. So, there we are. Look at the colour of this. This is beautiful. Right, oh, just take a little bit of that there, stick it on the edge of the glass. I don't want to taste it yet, because we need to do the aroma first. So, yeah, awesome. Let me just check that it's all lined up, and there we go. Right, so, as you can see with this beer, it's poured. If we shine the light through this, it's actually poured a very, very kind of, it's like an extremely, extremely dark purple, like a space purple or something like that. It really looks like that. But yeah, you can see that there's a solid 3/4, maybe a bit more than that. There's a solid 3/4 finger of a very rich kind of purpley, pinky type head to this one. But it looks very, very nice. And I'll say that straight away, just when I'm moving this beer around, you can smell the sort of chocolatey pastry kind of base to this one. So I think maybe we have to consider this beer as a pastry sour. Still unsure about how I feel with pastry sours. I think it varies from beer to beer. But yeah, with this one, you can see there's one or two little bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, but the head is kind of gradually just fading away. But yeah, with these big kind of fruity Gose type things, they can be lots and lots of different colours. They can be bright red, they can be like yellow and orange and things like this, or they can be extremely dark and very, very purple like this one. I mean, when it's got blueberries in it, it's going to be pretty damn dark, and then when it's got all these other kind of stouty elements to it as well, I'm not surprised that it's so dark. But yeah, if we shine the light through it, there's no light comes through this at all. This one is completely opaque. Basically, you know, you could say it's black as night with a kind of purpley head to it, but I think, you know, just the colour is telling me that this is a very, very dark purple. So what this would indicate, I think, is that there are real blueberries in this one, but I think usually what Omnipollo do, what I suspect they do, I should say more accurately, what I suspect they do is that they put the real fruit in the beer, but then they put a little bit of flavour essence in it just to kind of round it off a little bit more and make it seem a little bit more kind of candied. But yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one, and you know, it's kind of what you would expect if you know this brewery, to be honest with you, in terms of its appearance. But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this beer. I'm really curious about this. Oh yeah, straight away you have that kind of big sort of stouty, pastry stouty type base to this one. So yeah, it does, you know, I say pastry, it really does smell like that. Pardon me, it's got a big sort of pastry, kind of dusty pastry sort of base to it. You can smell like a kind of cakey element on top of it, a little bit like kladdkaka. For those of you who don't know, that's Swedish chocolate cake. It's like a brownie, but not, it's a little bit more kind of malleable, if you like, than a brownie is. It's a little bit more kind of, you can squish it and you can stretch it and all this kind of thing. It's just it's not quite as hard almost as a brownie, to be honest with you, or quite as thick in a sense. It's more kind of pasty almost, maybe that's the right way to describe it. It's more got the kind of texture of a paste kladdkaka, usually quite soft, but not spongy. Yeah, but yeah, you can definitely smell a nice little bit of chocolate cake in this one. So the base layer is so that sort of pastry quality to it, and it comes across as a little bit dusty. There's a nice wee bit of a kind of pastry type thing to this one, like I said, but then you've also got some nice powdery chocolatey elements to this beer. So it smells a little bit like Oh Boy or the Nesquik powders that you would use to make like hot chocolate or chocolate milk or something like this. That's the kind of vibe that you really get out of this beer, absolutely. So yeah, there's quite a nutty element to this one. I do get some, you know, almonds and pecans and stuff like this. There are some nutty elements to this beer. There's one or two little woody notes to it as well, but you can pick out the coconut. At the front of the nose, you can definitely pick out the coconut that's in this one, and it smells like it's real coconut, not just flavour essence, I would say. There's probably a wee bit of coconut flavour essence in the beer, again, just to kind of round it off, but the coconut, I think, blends in very well with the kind of dry, chocolatey, powdery sort of things in this beer. So, yeah, I do like how this thing goes together in that sense. The malty side of this beer, I think, goes together very, very nicely. So yeah, pastry, that sort of pastry base, nice kind of powdery chocolate. In terms of the chocolate, I would say that it's maybe a sort of 60-ish percent cocoa type chocolate that you get. Now this one, it's got a few elements of darker chocolate there, but it doesn't lean too far towards the high end of the cocoa scale, to be honest with you. There's more and more vanilla starts to come out of this beer, I would say, as well, but it's got a nice kind of chocolate brownie kind of Kladkaka type thing about this as well. So I really like that about it too, and you definitely get the coconut elements in there. There's a few woody undertones, I think, and then you've also got a wee bit of an almondy pecan, you know, kind of regular sort of nutty type thing to this one as well. So yeah, it's got a really nice element to it here. So all the things that it says on the can, you know, the pecans, the coconuts and things like that, you definitely get this out of this. It's a lot of the time with these goses and things like that, they've got quite straight shooting aromas. From the ingredients you can kind of tell what the beer is going to smell like, but the aromas still work out absolutely beautifully, I have to say. Now this beer, if we check the ingredients, I'm pretty sure it won't have hops. No, it doesn't say. It actually just says it contains, barley malt, wheat, dinkel. What would dinkel be? I'm not sure. Spelt. So spelt is a type of wheat. It's an old type of wheat, if I remember rightly, and lactose sugar. So yeah, this one doesn't have hops in it. But at the same time, often with these beers, you will get a little bit of placebo. I mean, you can detect a little bit of earthiness and grassiness in this beer, but like I say, this one does not have hops in it actually, so it smells very, very smooth actually at the same time. But on the fruity side of things then, to round off the aroma, so the fruity side of things for me, you do get a wee bit of sharpness out of this, and it almost comes across as a little bit raisiny, but you get the nice kind of juicy blueberries underneath. Blueberries normally carry a little bit of tart character as well, bear that in mind. But this beer, it does have a wee bit of a raisiny sharpness to it, and then it's got a bit of blueberry underneath, and you can smell the nice kind of oily fruity elements to the beer as well. So I really like how everything goes together in this beer. I think it is very, very nicely executed. I think it works. It really does work very, very well. So yeah, the aroma of this one is kind of what you'd expect, but it's got a nice cakey element to it. That's the thing that really stands out of this one for me, the pastry and the kind of chocolate cakey elements to it. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think this one is going to be pretty damn interesting actually. So yeah, take a bit of time, and we're going to get stuck into this now. So this one is the Bianca Noa Pecan Coconut Blueberry Mudcake Lassi Gose edition, coming in at 7% ABV from Omnipollo, based in Stockholm here in Sweden. But this one was brewed at the De Proef Brewery in Locriste Hifte near Ghent in Belgium. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. That's a beautiful beer. Yeah. This reminds me, I think, of the very first one that I had. This reminds me of the very first one that I had in the series. I'm trying to remember the name. I still have my video files open actually. So I think it was the Bianca. Yeah, the Bianca Blueberry Maple Pancake Chocolate Peanut Butter version. So yeah, that was it. So I've just got my YouTube page open there. See which one it is. We'll get rid of that now. But yeah, this one really reminds me. That was the very first experience, if I remember rightly, that I had with the Biancas. I've reviewed. This is the 5th one I've reviewed, so I'm hoping that I'm not wrong in that. But yeah, these beers are beautiful. This dark one, it really just, it's one of these things that you wouldn't think would work, but it just somehow pulls something out of the hat, and it works really well. So again, just a massive thumbs up to Omnipollo here. This one is going to be a sipper for the next hour or two for me, I think. You know, for me, these big sort of fruity goses and sweet beers like this, they are just sippers. They are sippers, and the thing is, that's nice is they're not, you know, crazy in alcohol. They're like 6-7%, so you can just enjoy the flavours out of them. They're very, very rich in flavour. So yeah, I really can appreciate how these ones go together. I love this series. The Bianca series from Omnipollo is pretty damn special actually. So thumbs up to Omnipollo for this, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the only negative thing you can really say about these beers is the price, to be honest with you. I mean, they might be better to you know, sell these beers in, you know, 330s or something like that, and then put more of them out there and just sell it for a lower price, because, you know, 18 euros for a can is pretty damn expensive actually. So yeah, even, you know, it's and as I say, you know, when it's 7%, you know, there's a bit of a bang for your buck thing here. I mean, you would expect that I think the camera's a little bit squint. There we go. So yeah, there is a bit of a bang for your buck element with this one, but I really like it. I mean, as I say, these beers for me are treats. They are just a little bit pricey though, but what can you do? What can you do? People like me are always going to buy them, so they've not really got the motivation to kind of change that, I guess. But yeah, where to start with this beer? So it is actually very similar to what you would expect from the aroma, to be honest with you. I really like that. So when you take the beer in, it comes across as very slick. You get a lot of the blueberries and a lot of the juicy kind of things out of it. It's nowhere near as puckering as that quadruple lingonberry one was, though. That thing was just mental. It was absolutely insane. But this one just comes across as it's got a really nice balance to it, this beer. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on with this. So straight away with this beer then, as you go across the middle of your palate, you get a really nice, you can feel the base of this beer is that sort of pastry element that I was talking about. It comes across a little bit like, knäckebröd or something, which is like a sort of biscuity thing that you get here in Scandinavia. A little bit like a sort of granola bar. It's kind of like that. It feels that it's a mixture of pastry and a kind of granola bar that just goes right across the middle of your palate there. That forms the backbone of this beer, absolutely. But yeah, that's the backbone of the beer. On top of that though, you start to get this kind of cakey sort of element to it. It does come across as a wee bit spongy, but a little bit thicker. That makes sense. So you do get a little bit of a kind of very spongy, chocolate cakey element, chocolate sponge coming out of this beer. That sits on top of that kind of pastry element that I was talking about. And the further that you go into the aftertaste, you start to get the more chocolatey elements out of it. So you start to feel that kind of Nesquik-y, sort of oh boy type chocolate powder kind of thing out of this one. And I really like that about this beer. The malt base and the adjunct, or the centre of your palate basically, I should say, gets a little bit drier the further that you go into the aftertaste, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about this beer. I really like how it just has a nice kind of transition there. As you move further forward to the front half of that middle third of your tongue, you start to get more of the coconut. The coconut comes across as being slightly toasty in a sense, but you really get the coconut coming out a little bit more in the aftertaste of this beer. But you can feel the pecans under this one. There is a nice kind of quite smooth and quite bright nutty element to the beer. But if you go to the front corners of the palate, then diagonally back, you do get a nice little bit of woody undertone to the beer. You really get a nice little bit of that out of it. So yeah, I can really appreciate how this beer goes about its business. I think it's really nicely executed. Absolutely. Yeah, I think this one really goes about its business very, very nicely. So yeah, the malty kind of adjuncty side of this beer is very, very good, I have to say. But yeah, on either side of that middle third of your palate, you do get, there is a wee bit of a kind of toasty bread crusty sort of thing, and on the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, and also in the region between middle third and back third of your palate. It sort of thickens up a little bit and it comes across as more cakey and spongy, but then there is a kind of roasty, toasty, grainy note underneath it as well. So I really like how that side of things goes together. So yeah, that side of the beer I think is very, very nice. On the back third of your palate though, you can feel there's another kind of cakey sort of thing to it. It is like a chocolate brownie, but it's a little bit like that, if you make a chocolate brownie and you sort of scrape the kind of toasty bit off the edge of the thing, or like a little bit of a cake that's been, you scrape the little bit of the edge off the tray. That's really what I get out of this one, to be honest with you. So I really like how that side of things goes together. So yeah, you can feel on that back third of your palate, the beer is just a little bit thicker, if that makes sense. So it thickens up a little bit, but as you move further forward to that border region on the middle third, between middle and back third of your palate, the thickness just drops away a little bit, and as you go further forward, it's you can feel it's just got that nice kind of thick and slightly dense kind of cakey element to it as well. I do get a wee tiny touch of like a very toasty caramel out of this beer, a little bit of a toasty brown sugar, but not much. This beer is more about the kind of spongy, cakey elements, to be quite honest with you. I get a lot more of that out of this beer. But yeah, it just goes together like really, really nicely. The sort of combination of stout and big Gose here is really nice. I mean, you can feel the sort of wheaty elements just smoothing this thing out. It does develop a little bit of a breadiness, I think, the further you go into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, I think in honesty, I think we've covered the malty middle part of your palate in this beer as well. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, there's a nice little bit of earthiness there, and as you move further forward on the side of the palate, you get a little bit of a kind of herbal quality there. So the herbal notes kind of come out as you move further forward. There's a little bit of a floral aromatic-y there's a little bit of a floral aromatic-y thing on the front corners of the palate, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's distinctly lighter. It's distinctly lighter and more kind of grassy as well. There is a wee bit of that there. Like I say, this beer does not have hops in it, but it certainly gives you a little bit of that kind of placebo effect of having a little touch of hop in there. I always think actually that adding hops into these sort of sours just gives you a little bit more depth of flavour. Usually what they do is they add like a slightly older Hallertau or Tettnanger hop or something like that, and that just gives you a wee touch more kind of depth of flavour to them. So I can usually appreciate that out these beers. I know that back home in Scotland, and Vault City Brewery, who are doing some awesome stuff, by the way, check them out, they add a little bit of hop into their beer, and I think it just works out very, very nicely. So yeah, so let's talk about the fruity side of this beer then. So on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer, and again, I can really appreciate how this one goes about its business. But yeah, I like that. But on the sort of cakey element to this beer, that forms the backbone of that front third of your tongue, and then you've got that slightly thicker cakey thing at the back of that front third of your tongue as well. So again, that's a very nice point about this beer. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, like I said, this beer does have a really nice impact on it. So when you take the beer in, you get a nice kind of blueberry sharpness that just comes in there, and it gives you a little bit of oiliness as you go further into the aftertaste with it. So the one thing I always like about sour beers is how they come in with an impact and then they just smoothen out. That's one of the things that I always look for as a sign of a nice sour beer, and you get a really nice, really good impact on this beer. It comes in with just a little bit of sharpness and tartness there, and then it juicens out very, very nicely. But yeah, it's blueberries all the way with this one, but you will find elements in there. It's a nice oily blueberry character that you get out of this, and the way you can tell that they've actually added fruit into the beer rather than it just being the flavour essence is that you get a little bit of blueberry around the kind of front edge of your tongue. Whenever you add fruit into a beer as an adjunct, it always the flavour always kind of aggregates a little bit around the kind of edge of your tongue, so you definitely get a little bit of that out of this beer. So yeah, there's some really nice kind of elements of that going on in this one for sure. So yeah, I think this works out really, really nicely. So a big thumbs up to Omnipollo on the fruity side of things for this beer. But yeah, you will get a few elements of kind of raisiny notes to it. I think there's a wee bit of a kind of pruny kind of element into this one as well, and that kind of mixes in with the sort of cakey flavours. It gives you the impression of a sort of alcoholic-y, boozy cake, this beer, in a lot of ways. But yeah, there's a wee bit of I get a wee bit of black currant sort of thing there on the front half of that front third of your palate. There's a soft sort of black curranty note there, but otherwise it's a nice big oily and juicy and very slightly tart blueberry that you get out of this one. But yeah, to be honest with you, I think everything that we've said so far, I think that summarises the flavour of this beer really damn nicely. Actually, this is potentially my favourite one that I've had in the Bianca series so far. I've always enjoyed them, but I think this one this stands out a little bit for me. I really like the balance of things in this beer. It's definitely worth trying this one. Yeah, as I say, it's 12.5 euros, or if you buy it in the Hamburg web shop, it's 18 euros. It's a pricey beer, this, definitely, but at the Swedish price, I think 12, paying 10, 12 euros for something like this, I can live with that, but paying 18 euros, nah, I don't think this beer is quite worth that. But it's very, very nicely done, and I would recommend that you try this one for sure. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful beer. So thumbs up to, pardon me, Omnipollo once again with this one. So yeah, let's round off with the mouthfeel then. What can we say about that? So I think this beer comes across as full-bodied, kind of right in the middle of the range of the full body. It's definitely not the thickest one that I've come across, but in terms of sour beers, it is pretty, it is pretty damn thick. I think that's fair to say. But the carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a nice big slick oily sort of thing, as I said. The mouthfeel overall is very smooth and very slick in that sense. And yeah, it's just the mouthfeel really suits the flavour profile of this beer, 100%, absolutely. But yeah, it's just beautifully done. So yeah, what can we say about this? What else can we say about this? How do we say the in terms of IBUs and things like that, I think this beer, technically speaking, will be 0 IBUs, but I think it does have a wee bit of bitterness to it from the kind of dryness of the chocolate and the sort of cakey elements. So I would say it's between, there's maybe about 5 or 10 IBUs, technically speaking, in this beer, although it's, or from a kind of flavour perspective, I think technically speaking this has 0 IBUs. So yeah, in terms of the malty kind of side of things, like I say, it's got a bit of dryness. It develops a bit of dryness the further you go into the aftertaste, but it's quite smooth, got a bit of sweetness to it. But I think there's a good balance between that dryness and sweetness and kind of cakey, spongy type thing in this beer, and the fruity side of the beer. A little bit tart at the beginning, but very juicy and slightly oily and slick the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer. But I think, being no doubt, this is a beautifully executed beer, and potentially one of my favourites that I've had from Omnipollo so far. It could well be my favourite in this Bianca series. I've always been impressed with these, I've always enjoyed them, but I think this one, out of the 3 that we've had recently, I think this one probably shades the other 2 for me. The apricot almond one was really good. I enjoyed that because that was a bit different to what I'd had before. The lingonberry one, I enjoyed that, but that was a bit of a grower. That one, I think, because it was quadruple lingonberry, they probably would have got away with just, calling it straight up lingonberry. I think going crazy on lingonberries is a bit crazy in itself, but this one strikes me as the one that's most balanced. I've enjoyed this one. I like these kind of darker beers like this. So yeah, big thumbs up to Omnipollo for this one. So we can round off the review there then. So this one was another addition to the Bianca series, the Noa Pecan Coconut Blueberry Mudcake Lassi Gose, coming in at 7% ABV from Omnipollo, brewed at the Brewery in Lochristighefte down in Ghent in Belgium, but one of the beers of Omnipollo in Stockholm here in Sweden. Awesome beer, and I highly recommend you check this out if you get the chance. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Omnipollo. We will no doubt return to these guys very soon. I always enjoy reviewing the different beers from these guys. We'll see what they've got coming out over the next few months. But thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Omnipollo if you haven't already, and have a go at some of these Bianca beers. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and catch you guys in the next one.